Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Events, which features conversations with industry leaders discussing their careers and experiences producing the world's most talked about events. I'm your host, Starr. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Soroka, music agent at United Talent Agency, UTA. Ryan will share insights into his career, music and talent representation, and management. Ryan has over 10 years of experience representing artists within the entertainment industry. However, his passion for playing a role in music started in the seventh grade when he began running local shows as a means to showcase the music he felt strongly about. Throughout Ryan's career, he has applied that same passion, working with countless artists, agencies, and live music venues to bring that experience to the masses. In Ryan's role as music agent at United Talent Agency, he oversees the North America tour strategy for a host of artists, including the Aces, David Garibaldi, One OK Rock, and Monsieur Perine. If I mispronounce that, then he will correct me later, placing them on multiple tours. Ryan is not only responsible for managing talent, but he also works as a change agent through his platform Play Inspired. Ryan's mission is to develop artists, giving music and art a place within the ever-changing cultural landscape. Ryan, I'm so happy to have you join us today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Starr. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry if I butchered that.
Oh, no, it's all good. It was close enough.
That's close enough. So we'll get right into it. How did you get your start in the industry?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I was fortunate enough to kind of get a start when I was super young. Transparently, when I was a kid, I was a drummer in a lot of really, really crappy pop punk bands. And to be honest, my friends and I wanted to play shows, but nobody would put us at an actual music venue to play shows because we were kids and our music wasn't that good and a host of other reasons. And to be honest, we just thought, well, why don't we just try to put on our own shows? So, I grew up in a suburban town in northern New Jersey. And, we figured that there was small, music studios and VFW halls that we could potentially rent out. And at the time we thought, what else could kids do on the weekends besides maybe play Xbox or, I don't know, go to the movies or something. So we figured we could put on these cool shows with our band and other friends of ours bands that went to our high school and create these like cool, shows and experiences every couple of months. And I remember after the first show, I think we made like $300, and me and my friends were like, we are rich. This is it. We can like drop out of school. Like nothing else matters, like officially in the music industry. And we kind of just kept putting on shows. And after a while, I figured I don't really want to be risking money that I don't have because I'm a child. And eventually just kind of try to figure out exactly what I could be doing to still be within the music industry. And MySpace was super popular at the time. So I was just kind of trying to figure out using connections and people that I met on MySpace, if it's possible to help artists out by connecting them with promoters and venues and helping them find shows. And it was kind of just an opportunity that I created just from chance and from technology at the point. And fortunately, I met a lot of really cool people along the way, and a lot of people have given me a lot of help and opportunities, and it's led to where I am right now.
That's awesome. Well, we know that you didn't drop out of school. So talk to us a little bit more about how you went further along that path. So basically from childhood and then to a little bit like getting fully integrated into the industry in a formal role.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as I mentioned, like I kind of was starting to find bands on MySpace and trying to see if I can basically be like their pseudo agent just by helping them find shows. And at the time I was picking up this band called The Dangerous Summer, who was the first band that I technically had on my roster. And, they were a small band from Ellicott City, Maryland. Didn't really have anybody working with them at the time. And, fortunately, they just started to get a good following, and they signed to a small label called Hopeless Records, or not a small label, but an independent label called Hopeless Records. And once that happened, a man over there named Eric Tobin started helping me out and kind of giving me pointers and connecting me with some of the right people. And then simultaneously at the same time, I was starting to get connected through this music festival that used to exist called the Bamboozle by this guy named John D'Esposito, who helped connect me with other people and kind of show me the ropes within that world as well. And, just kind of throughout high school, I kind of figured out how everything works behind the scenes and just exactly like who the players are and who's involved in what, and just kind of like the vernacular to use and the different situations that you get yourself into, and just kind of learned a lot by doing and making like a ton of mistakes, and just kind of trying to figure everything out from there.
No, that's awesome. So obviously you were doing well before you even decided to go into college and basically like take this into a formal role. But did you wind up studying this in college, or what was your base there?
So when I got into college, I got into Penn, and I got to study at Wharton, and they didn't have like a music industry program, but I also figured, based off the options I had to go to college, it was a great school, and I kind of would benefit from learning about just business in general while I'm there. So I took a liking to marketing and finance as my concentrations. But while in college, myself and my former business partner Brad Wiseman, he and I were kind of informally working together on bands, and I was at one point actually booking his band, and we just kind of got to a point when I was in college where we thought maybe it's the time to formally put together an actual company and do this right. So when I was in college, I met, for the first time in person, Dan Sanshaw and Steve Reddy over at Equal Vision, which is another independent record label based out of Albany. And, they run the record label, but they also do super entrepreneurial, where they also have a merch company and we're investors in a bunch of other things. So they kind of helped me formalize the business side of the company that Brad and I were building. So we launched what ended up being uncreatively named the Soroka Agency when I was a freshman in college. And then we kind of started building everything from there simultaneously while I was still studying and really learning. It was essentially just kind of like from a business perspective, like, like kind of taking the test while you have like the textbook with you, because like you're kind of like trying to learn as you go, and also hope that you're not making mistakes or getting caught, while you're trying to figure out how to make everything work.
Yeah, that most people, they'll take that skill set and then do it afterwards, but you decided like, let's just mash this together and see what happens.
Listen, the opportunity was there. I just figured, we had a cool thing going for a while, and kind of like musically, we were working with a lot of pop punk and rock bands, because that's kind of what my background was. I grew up going to Warped Tour. My dad brought me to my first Warped Tour when I was like 10 or 12, and my favorite bands growing up were like Less Than Jake and Blink-182 and Sum 41. So like those are the bands that we were working with, and at the time we had a few artists that were really starting to show a lot of promise within that space, and we just kind of ran with it because the opportunity was there. So we kind of just wanted to take it, to seize the moment.
No, it makes sense. I mean, you were at the top school, so I'm sure the level of education that you were getting there tied in very quickly to what you were doing in your independent life. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird because like it was demanding naturally. So like I'm getting frustrated while at school because I'm really invested in what we were doing work wise. So like I could really care less about learning how to like leverage and unleverage financial positions and figure out like how exactly to trade stocks and look at that side of things. But like at the same time, I guess in hindsight it was definitely necessary and good learning practices.
No, definitely. I think all of us, like, you take this skill sets from everything, and then you eventually, it's like an aha moment where it's like, oh, I kind of did need that. So thanks.
Yeah, exactly. 2020 is definitely hindsight.
Exactly. I think we're all learning that during 2020. So you talked to us about having your own agency a bit, but eventually that leads us to your role as a music agent at UTA. So share with us some insight into the day-to-day role now and how that transition even happened.
Totally. So essentially, after 5 years of doing the Soroka agency, we at that point we kind of built up the roster to have about 50 or 60 artists, and we had a few other agents that were working with us. But we kept hitting a lot of the same obstacles where it was, we'd build artists up to a certain point, and then they would go to a bigger agency, or just like certain things just kind of really weren't going our way. So Brad and I had a true heart-to-heart conversation one day and just kind of figured that we need to put ourselves both in positions where we're able to continue doing the job, where we had a little bit more protection and more opportunities for resources and opportunity to grow. So, back in 2016, we both, amicably decided to just go our separate ways and go and try to find out greener pastures at other agencies. And, you know, there's no hard feelings or anything. We're still super close friends now, and it's always been great. But, you know, throughout the entire process of running the Soroka agency, you put within music, and it's different, you know, in film, TV, and other departments, but within music, agents across different companies tend to work with each other a lot. You kind of need to play nice in the sandbox per se. So you're always meeting people. And through that, you know, I've made great relationships with certain other agents at other companies, and it led to conversations of me potentially going and joining these other companies that existed. One of those being UTA. And at the time there was, you know, maybe like 5 or 6 different people at the company that I was close with, who I was having conversations with. And eventually, once Brad and I came to the realization, I kind of weighed out my different options, and it just made the most sense to come to UTA. So I've been there since 2016. And on top of, you know, bringing in a few of the artists I was previously working with, I've been building my roster otherwise, but also I've been taking a role within just like booking the general roster within a specific territory, and, you know, 1,500 capacity venues and above.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to have your own book of business and having artists that would actually go with you, because like you said, it's a really competitive business, and a lot of people get poached, as as we know. And
Yep.
To basically have that loyalty with the artist, just talk to us a little bit about like artist relationship and building that relationship with the artist so that they are comfortable staying with you long term.
Totally. I mean, it honestly just comes down to the attention and the work that you put into it at the end of the day. You know, a lot of the times when you're working with an artist, depending on who it is, most of the time, as from an agent perspective, you're mostly dealing with the manager. However, it still is super important to have an actual direct relationship with the artist, just because, you know, when you're most emotionally invested in it and you really want to see an artist win and succeed, you know, you want to be able to understand their perspectives on everything and be able to see what they're going through mentally and where their head's at, just so you can understand like the best way to position them. So, you know, when you're booking a tour or looking for different opportunities, what resonates with them specifically as an artist. And maybe there's certain things that aren't being relayed to you, or certain preferences. So like you may not be aware if an artist, you know, if their dream festival is to play Lollapalooza, or if their dream artist to open for is, I don't know, Bruce Springsteen or something,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so like kind of like understanding the clients that you work with and the bond that you build make it easier to gain that trust. And as long as you're delivering and being communicative and also just being open and honest with them, then they normally trust you as their representative within the agency space. And it helps, you know, when you're in this situation where you might not be able to bring someone with you or go to a different company, it helps like have those conversations because they know that you've been in their corner since day one.
No, definitely. And I think a lot of times, I mean, relationships are everything. That's a consistent thing that we talk about on Beyond the Events, just because you just never know. Like in this industry, it's so small, you're probably going to come across somebody's path again. So it's just best to be a great person and
100%.
make sure that you have a credible roster with you and talent behind you. People know.
That's
So
1,000%.
that goes right into my next question is, what have you loved about being an agent? Like what gets you going?
To be honest, I'll like, it's an insanely stressful job. And I think that, and this isn't just exclusive to being an agent. And I'm sure you feel it within your role and what you do. And there's a million other jobs that are with this, but, you know, I'll start with like the downside of it is the fact that you're always planning 3 to 6 months plus in advance. And in a pandemic time, it seems like we're planning like, you know, 12 plus months in advance, but you're always planning so far in advance that like, it's hard to really be able to enjoy the things that are happening in real time, for like the small wins that are happening as they happen, just because you're always so stressed about everything in the future. However, you know, when you do have an artist that you've been grinding it out for since day one, and you're able to watch them perform at a festival, that's like a major milestone for them, or there's that big headline show where they're finally selling out, you know, Irving Plaza or Webster Hall or something, or they're on a big support tour that, you know, it's the opportunity of their dreams. Like that's really the moments that make it all worthwhile, because you finally feel like all the stress and all the action, everything you put into it, like finally culminates to something, and it's something that is physically there in person. You know, music's an interesting thing because it's not a tangible item, and shows is an interesting industry to be in, because like the live space, you're giving music a place, and you're able to physically see like, oh cool, like here's an artist that I believed in, who I heard an MP3 of 6 years ago, and now they're doing this really important thing in their lives, and they're having like a moment within the cultural sphere. And that's like the thing that actually makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, and you talked about placing artists. Like that's a big part of your role. So can you talk to us about like what does that mean? Like, because a lot of our listeners may not understand like what that actually entails.
Yeah. So, I mean, as an agent, not only are you constantly pitching artists, to get offers to go and play shows or festivals, but also kind of, as I mentioned before, which is why you really need to play nice in the sandbox with everybody. Constantly, you're pitching artists to go and be the opener for a larger tour where they would be able to, gain press and also a fan base by playing and opening for a much larger artist. So, in the process with that, constantly we're pitching ourselves a specific artist to another agent. Maybe you have the manager deal with their manager also and see if there's anything that they can collaborate on that would basically move a name up a list and make it a higher priority for an offer to come for that artist to open for whoever it is. And it's a really significant win. If you're an artist that's putting out their first record, or they need to kind of like maintain some sort of relevancy in between records, those support opportunities are huge because it allows you to continue building your fan base when you might not have, much going on the music release side that allows you to move the needle.
No, definitely. I mean, being versatile is everything. And it's basically you're playing in so many different sandboxes and managing those relationships. It's probably a borderline on insanity. But
absolutely. It's a lot to keep track of for sure.
Exactly. And you talked about it briefly. Obviously, these times are interesting times. How have your clients' needs changed? I mean, there's nothing really going on. So are they dabbling in other spaces? How is that going?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, some have straight up just put their hands up and said, cool, we're just going to go back and start working on music and not really prioritize like touring or live within this year or however long this takes. And they're on their path doing that. But others have been trying to get creative and figure out what else you could possibly be doing now from a artist development point of view, but also we need income. How are we able to sustain our lives with this career without shows point of view? So, we've been really having to get creative and think outside the box. I'm sure you've seen the different drive-in shows and socially distanced pod type shows. Mm-hmm. It works for some artists. It doesn't really work for others. We've been working on virtual live streams as well, which has been great wins for certain artists. But in addition to that, seeing if brand opportunities may exist where you might be able to do something in collaboration with a brand. But it's tough. I mean, I think everyone's kind of writing the script as we go along during the pandemic. And, we're at this moment 7 months in, and everyone's just kind of trying to figure out like what is new that we could possibly do to help an artist, be able to make a living, but also continue to grow, especially because some acts are still putting out records right now. Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure that they're getting the attention that they deserve in this year.
Exactly. And you touched about that. There's a lot of things that are going to be new. So I would ask, in your opinion, as of right now, we won't hold you to it, but what do you see as being some of these new trends and new normals that may stick following this period?
That's a good question. I mean, I keep going back and forth as to how much the virtual performance aspect is going to stick, because like, I don't think anything beats the experience of actually seeing something in person. However, I do think that maybe there's a world where if an artist sells out a venue very quickly, there might be a virtual component that could be sold along with it. So say you sell out, the Bowery Ballroom in New York City, which holds 575 people. Perhaps there's an opportunity for them to be able to sell additional tickets if people want to watch it from home afterwards, as long as the show's already sold out. And that way, everybody's able to continue generating more money, and also fans are able to experience a New York City show for their favorite artists as well.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think the upsell was probably there because, like you said, people want to see things in person, and you've seen it just from the industry opening up in other areas of the country and the world. Like, people are flooding back. So I don't think there's a replacement for that, but we'll definitely see some new add-ons that come out of this for the people that can't experience it. Is there anything else that you would like to see that you're not seeing now, or are you pretty content where we're at?
I mean, content's a hard word during the pandemic. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think what's going to be interesting when we come back is there's going to be so many artists that are going to be trying to tour in such a small period of time that I'm optimistic that we'll get more creative as agents and as teams with the packaging that we do. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that we'll see, really cooler combinations of artists, or you might see two artists that would do their own separate tour because they really want to go and play, Brooklyn Steel and go do their own thing. Just be like, you know what, how about we package together and do a bigger overall show together? And that way you're not competing against each other in the same time frame, but also you're building a really cool experience for the artist. For the fan who would be like, cool, these are two of my favorite acts, and they're doing this like once in a lifetime type tour. Like, this is a cool opportunity for me to experience right now, as opposed to having to decide as to how you want to spend your money in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to shift a little bit and just kind of go back and bring it all together.
Sure.
So how do you think your previous positions, entrepreneurship, have helped you be a successful agent?
That's a good question. I think it's mostly because, when I was doing Soroka Agency, it was interesting because I think any sort of entrepreneur, anyone that's running a company, you kind of feel like you're jumping into the deep end without knowing how to swim for the most part. So, and you don't really know if what you're doing is going to help, or if anything's going to lead you to what you're trying to get to. We grow up and if you want to be a soccer player, you do soccer practice, and you do different drills, and you figure it's going to help you get to where you're going to. However, there's not really like a script that's written out for people that are running their own companies. So I think it's helpful in the fact that, in a time like now, you kind of just need to throw the script out and just think, what's something that I can do that's not necessarily within the normal means of the job description, for the sake of servicing and helping out the artists that we work with, and just figuring out like what's that new element, what's that new service that you can do, and try to figure out how to make it work.
No, it totally makes sense. So really just piggybacking right off of that, like, if you were to give someone advice that wants to basically explore entrepreneurship, what piece of advice would you give them?
I mean, I would just say, I would say figure out, do your research first, and then just dive into it. Like if you're trying to get into music per se, like say you want to get into entrepreneurship as a promoter, like research and figure out who all the players are in the game, mm-hmm. Who are the other promoters that are within your space and your lane, also who are the people that you're going to be buying from, what are the artists that resonate and work within, the market that you're trying to be a promoter in, and then just go for it, and understand that you're going to screw up a lot, and that's part of it, and then hopefully you can just learn from those mistakes and they don't become mistakes in the future.
Exactly. And even though you didn't take the traditional path, you kind of dived in and then decided to go into the agency world. What's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody that basically either wants to enter in fresh, let's just say they're coming out of college, and or wants to transition like you did, like people who want to do career changes, things like that?
I think it's most important, and it's going to be way easier when the pandemic is over, but networking is always key. So you really just need to go out there and put yourself out in those situations and just try to be, I know not everybody's I know not everyone's an extrovert, but I think you still need to try to put yourself out there and just try to network and at least meet more people, because even if, you have an idea as to what you want to do, you might meet somebody who's working on something else that sounds super interesting and which you might pivot to, and you'll only benefit more from actually getting to know a plethora of different people who might give you insight as to what you want to do eventually in life.
Exactly. And I will say this with all due respect, you're not a one-trick pony. So that leads us to the awesome work that you're doing with your initiative, Play Inspired. Please tell the audience about Play Inspired, why you started it, and its mission.
Sure. So Play Inspired is a charity project I work on. Essentially, the backstory of it is when I was a kid, my mom was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. She was from a super small town called Altamira. And it was, at the time it was, they have, fortunately now they have full electricity and everything. But back when she was growing up and when we used to go as kids, there would be like electricity, like maybe like 2 hours a day and like no running water. So it kind of gives you an idea as to what kind of place it was. And my brother and I, when we were kids, used to go there for summers and play baseball because we were obsessed with it. And I was great until I stopped growing. But I always want to kind of find a way to give back and just be able to support everyone over there. And actually the cool thing within UTA is they have this program called Live Inspired, where they choose 5 different employees per year who apply, and they give them a $2,500 grant and 1 week to be able to do a project either specifically for themselves or a charity project for others. And it's essentially like a give a dream or live a dream type situation. And to be honest, I applied, and what I really wanted to do was go back and sponsor the league that I used to play in back in Dominican Republic. And fortunate enough, I was chosen. And originally I was planning on just doing that, where I was going to go back and be able to pay for all the kids and organize a bunch of equipment for them. But then I had an outpouring of help from people who were willing to donate also and keep it going. So now essentially we're trying to do once a year where we're going to pick out a different league in an underprivileged area somewhere in the Caribbean, and gather equipment to donate and help subsidize some of the costs of the league, and just see what we could possibly do to help out so kids that might not be able to afford to play baseball or softball are able to do so.
That's awesome. See, I learned something new about you every day. I did not know that you played in DR. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that was like 4th and 5th grade, so I'm not gonna say that I was on the cusp of making the MLB by any means, but it was still a good experience at the time.
No, also, you know what? I will say, honestly, playing in any type of sports and structured environment growing up, it really does help you coming into our industry, because
Totally.
that foundation really does transfer over. So it does help. So I'm sure that definitely played into a major part into who you've become, and that has been a success. So
Absolutely.
I typically ask, what's one event that you would love to or would have loved to work on before, during, or future? But for you, I'm actually going to switch it and put you on the spot. So I'm going to say, what's one artist that you would have loved to work with or would love to work with in the future, and why?
Interesting. Well, I'm a really big fan of Carol G at the moment. So honestly, I would just love to work with her just because I love, her style is incredible. I love exactly what she kind of stands for within the entire Latin reggaeton community.
Mhm.
So I just personally, as a music fan, that's kind of definitely one of them that's up there for me.
And you actually touched on something, because you have a barrage of artists. So I know that you're passionate about all different types of music, but is there a particular genre of music that you like? It's like, yes, this is it.
I mean, I think personally for me, just because it's what I grew up on, like pop punk music is definitely always going to be that kind of thing. So like if I'm at a bar and, a Sum 41 song comes on, that I'm going to start, depending on how many drinks I'm in, I'm going to start just belting out every single lyric in front of everybody. So that's definitely my bread and butter personally.
So we know what to put on next time.
Exactly.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. So I would ask you this, how can the audience connect with you and become more involved with Play Inspired?
Feel free to hit me up on Instagram, which is just my handle is just my name. If you can add my email to the show notes, feel free to email me anytime. I'm generally always down to give advice or just talk to anybody if they have any sort of questions. And yeah, always happy to help.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ryan. I will definitely make sure that everyone gets your social handles. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on Beyond the Events. Please feel free to follow us as well on social handles, Instagram, LinkedIn at Beyond the Events. And thank you for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thanks, Starr. Appreciate it.